Okay, hello and welcome to the Sustainable Materials Management webinar series, a joint effort between the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My name is Wayne Bowen. I'm the program manager for the Recycling Market Center, and I will serve as your moderator today. Today's topic is titled Investment and Innovation to Build a Circular Economy, a new economic model focused on a profitable and sustainable future. And our presenter today is Bob Anderson, who I will introduce in a moment. After his presentation, we will have a Q&A session. So if you have a question or comment, you can use the Q&A feature located on your control panel on your screen. And please note that an edited version of this webinar will be made available for viewing via YouTube links on the National Recycling Coalition and Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center websites. And also please note that the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center, its affiliates and funders, and the National Recycling Coalition assume no liability resulting from the use of any information provided during the webinar. The webinar is only provided as an informational tool, and no discrimination is intended and no endorsement by these organizations is implied. So Bob Anderson is Vice President of Business Development and Growth at Closed Loop Partners and has worked in the solid waste industry for over 33 years. At CLP, he is responsible for developing and executing projects for the local recycling fund, Closed Loop Community Group, and a clothing and electronics business unit called Retriever, focusing on municipal and haul relationships. Bob came most recently from Community Recycling / FCR during his 12-year stewardship of the Mid-Atlantic region, processing more than tripled to over 530,000 tons of recyclables per year. Bob managed some of the largest municipal contracts in the company, including the city of Philadelphia and Camden County, New Jersey. Bob started his career at Browning Ferris Industries, selling commercial waste services, where he managed a 90,000 household residential system before spending several years in mergers and acquisitions for BFI and Allied Waste after Allied's successful acquisition of BFI in 1999. Bob serves on the board of directors for the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center in the executive capacity as secretary and also for the Association of New Jersey Recyclers. He was appointed by the mayor of Philadelphia to serve on the Solid Waste and Recycling Advisory Committee, and he's a past board member of the Professional Recyclers of Pennsylvania. And so I'm going to turn that over to you, Bob.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I usually have to give a little bit of background, but Wayne, you did an excellent job on giving my bio. So the only thing I'll add to that is, I started my career in the solid waste with BFI, Allied, which became Republic. And I like to tell people that I left the dark side and moved to the light when I joined FCR and recycling back in 2005. So we can get this thing kicked off. I have this disclaimer. Only taking me about 20-30 minutes to read through this. Actually, as an investment firm, we need to make sure that that we have this disclaimer in the front of all of our slide decks, but certainly I'm not going to go through it. Closed Loop Partners is an investment firm and innovation center building the circular economy. We're searching for a new economic model focused on profitable and sustainable future. And so what does that really mean? When we're looking at the old system, which is a linear economy, take, make, waste, how do we transition our economy into the circular economy? So, we're invested in a new economic model focused on a profitable and sustainable future. The way we do that is we've got the Innovation Center, which is the Center for Circular Economy. You may be familiar with some of our initiatives there where we've got Beyond the Bag and Next Gen Cup. Both of those bring large firms in a pre-competitive atmosphere where they can solve problems together and then deploy those solutions into their business models. The lending side of our business, or the catalytic capital side of our business, includes four asset classes. We've got venture capital, which really invests in new and emerging technologies growth equity, where we take positions in companies, private equity, and project finance, where we've got a number of municipalities where we've invested into their infrastructure. This is the list of some of the businesses that we've invested in, and you can see we hit the 4 buckets inside that circular economy. So consume, collect, process, design, manufacture. You can see under collection, we've got a number of municipal investments in the city of Memphis, the city of Moline, Portage County, recycling infrastructure. You've got some cutting edge technologies like AMP Robotics, which in full transparency, I represented them in the past. We've invested in Murph, municipal Murphs, say in the city of Phoenix. And then on the design side, you've got companies like Aero Aggregates, which are local to Pennsylvania, where they are transitioning or taking Murph glass and creating a lightweight aggregate. So if we look at the history of where we've been and modern Murph economics, when we first started in the first 10 years of recycling, the industry was extremely fragmented. Revenues were based solely on commodities, and recycling was basically free. And the result of that is companies really started to become insolvent and hit real financial barriers. In the 2000s, waste companies began consolidation of the industry, and that somewhat throttled competition. In the next 10 years, or say the last 12 to 15 years, 12 years, we've seen a market shift where we've really gone from recycling is free to a fee for service, which became the standard in the industry, and commodity sales are shared. The cost drivers in the Murph operations are residue, labor, which anybody who's in the labor market today is probably, labor is one of the biggest challenges that Murph operators have. Freight and logistics. Freight is also a very large challenge in today's Murph environment. And then you've got repairs and maintenance and insurance. The key revenue drivers are processing fees, sale of commodities, quality of the bales through best class technology. So you can increase your commodity sales if you're creating high quality bales. And then there's some extra revenues that can come through by third-party processing and packaging tests for manufacturers. So that's kind of a brief summary of where closed loop partners fits into the circular economy, where we've been today, and what does that mean potentially for tomorrow. And so Closed Loop Partners has invested in a number of large Murph assets. We acquired a controlling position of Balcones in Texas, which is one of the largest recyclers in the state of Texas. SSR, which is one of the most technologically advanced Murphs down in Florida, and recently with Sims Municipal Recycling, which handles all the recycling for the city of New York. So we absolutely appreciate that large regional Murphs are necessary in certain markets, but we asked ourselves, hey, recycling is local, and we need to stop treating recyclables like waste, trying to hub and spoke lightweight material. What is the next step for municipalities and and regional independents who are at the mercy right now of a large regional Murph. And so if you look at a microcosm of past businesses, and you look at microbreweries and the paradigm shift that has occurred in the beer industry, in 1995, there were only 192 microbreweries in the country. By 2018, there were 4,500. And it was unthinkable that a microbrewery could challenge one of the top 3 brewers. When we look at Murph Processing today, RRS reported in Resource Recycling that 55% of all processing today is controlled by the 4 largest haulers in the country. The other 45% are controlled by municipalities, smaller regional haulers, and pure play recyclers. And for years, when I was with Community, we talked about what the criteria is for Murph construction, which, you're looking at, if I would go into a municipality or someone who'd had material and say, look, if you don't have 6,000 to 8,000 tons per month of material, a 60 to 100,000 square foot warehouse, and capital available between 15 and 25 million, which today, in today's market, 15 to 25 million for one of the big regional Murphs is probably a little light on the CapEx. But, those were the criteria that we looked at when we were looking at sourcing a large scale Murph. And those criteria still hold true where there's critical mass in a large city, say the city of New York, the city of Philadelphia, and some of the other larger regional facilities. But what's the impact what's the environmental impact for smaller volumes where we hub and spoke long haul recyclables? So we pick up recyclable materials, we take it to a transfer station, haul it in a walking floor where, we're only going to get anywhere from 12 to 15 tons of material into that, and take it, in some cases, 20, 30, or even 150 miles, and layer all that additional cost onto the transfer, and then take it to a Murph where you're then paying an additional fee for the Murph processing. So we sat back and we said, can we build a localized Murph designed to empower communities and independent haulers? And if we could, what would that look like? So we went to work and decided that what would it need to look like if we wanted to do a modular Murph or a smaller scale Murph. And we wanted to be able to get down to 4,000 to 5,000 tons per year on a single shift. But the scope on that is we also want to be able to process, say, as much as 20,000 tons of material, 25,000 tons of material. And can we modulate a Murph to be able to scale as either an independent hauler or a municipal area grows? So we're looking for a small scale where we can enable efficiency. We want it to be material agnostic, where we could do dual stream, single stream, or source separated. The entire industry has moved towards single stream, but you do have some communities who are going back to the future and doing dual stream, or those communities are still doing source separated. So we wanted to solve the material issue as well. And we wanted to be a compact size. So on a small scale, if you're doing 4,000 to 5,000 tons, we wanted to be able to do it in 10,000 square feet. Obviously, if you're going to be doing 15,000 to 20,000 tons, you're going to need a larger footprint to handle those volumes. So I want to go over 2 case studies of MRFs that are operating today. One is at Cumberland County, New Jersey, called the Authority. And the second is Lakeshore Recycling, which is one of the largest Murph processors in the Chicagoland area. So I'm going to start with the Authority, which is a very progressive waste authority in New Jersey. They've got a landfill. They have a gas recovery system with an energy hub to generate electricity off of the for an internal complex power grid. They've got leachate recovery. They've got natural gas filling station. They have some organics processing, and what was really missing was a recycling facility. So they were transloading all of their material into a third-party processor. So we wanted to break through the entrenched thought, and we said, okay, Cumberland County had a 12,000 square foot building. We plan to expand that by about 4,000 square foot. They need 1,300 to 1,400 ton per month of processing. And essentially what we did is put a full scale small MRF with a pre-sort, OCC screen, fiber screen, QC stations, and container sort. One of the big paradigm shifts in this layout is there's no bunkers. Everything goes directly into a baler. And the facility was extremely low CapEx, particularly in relationship to what you would need to spend for a large scale MRF. So our facility in Cumberland County today would be about $2.5 million investment. The key to the system, going back to the hub and spoke, is we're going to eliminate 1 million truck miles over the life of a 10-year contract. So that's pretty substantial when you think in terms of they're only doing about a 30-mile round trip. We've got a community out in North Dakota that we're working with. They're currently taking their recyclable materials 500 miles. So there's a lot of communities where these recyclable materials are being transported substantial distances at a very high cost. When we look at Lakeshore Recycling, so Lakeshore is a large independent company operating a state-of-the-art MRF in Chicagoland. And they chose a Revolution system in this case for a satellite location in DeForest, very near Madison, Wisconsin. And the concept was that they had this amount of recyclables, about 3,000 to 4,000 tons, that they were long hauling into Chicago, with the intent of trying to grow that volume in the marketplace so that they could build a larger, more permanent facility. So in the case of Lakeshore, they put this system, they bolted it down into a warehouse space, and they're processing about 2 to 3 tons per hour as a bridge facility until they can build enough volume in order to invest in a larger scale facility. And you know, they are doing all residential single stream, and they managed to eliminate all of the long haul transfer. This system was matched to their needs. And what we're looking at on these small scale modular MRFs is how do we meet the demands of the local independent hauler or the local municipality. When we look at the history of recycling, in the very beginning of, we started this in the late 80s and early 90s, all processing was fairly local, was fairly regional. Municipalities did process their own materials. Independent haulers did find their own way to process their own materials. And so, we're generating these tools in order to empower local municipalities and independent haulers to be able to take control of their recycling processing in order to create a sustainable future for these municipalities and independent haulers. We've gotten into a situation over the last 3 years where in many cases, processing recycled materials can be equal to or 3 times what it is to landfill materials. And if you are layering on transfer costs on top of that, it's not a real sustainable situation to have communities that are paying $100, $150 a ton to process their recycled materials in a market where they can landfill them for $60 to $75 a ton. So that really gives a good overview of the direction that we're headed with the modular MRF and the smaller scale MRF. But another thing that I wanted to talk about today is a mobile MRF. And what if we could develop a processing facilities that's on wheels, where you could potentially do shared services between municipalities, much like some municipalities share a tub grinder or vac system. The Roadie can also be used for composition studies and public events. So we debuted our Roadie in Richmond at NASCAR. The Richmond Raceway was looking for a solution. We partners with a large consumer beverage brand in order to take the Roadie in, and we wanted to see how would recycling go if we were able to pull the recyclables out of the public venue bowl. And it was an extremely successful test. We found that close to 50% of the material being taken out of the stadium seats was recyclable materials, and we were able to extract those recyclable materials. From there, we went to Keeneland, which is a horse racing event and horse racing auction, where we were able to then take material that was source separated, so they had a dual container system. But a lot of times at public venue recycling, the public venue, the recycling container in the public venue is too contaminated for a MRF to really take. So we found that there's a significant value in processing that 2-can system before it goes to a recycler, so that we could extract that material. And then our third event for the initial rollout was going to the University of Kentucky and doing some sorting at one of their stadium events. What the Roadie looks like, if anybody's ever been to a carnival, it's very similar to, say, a carnival ride, where we can set it up in about an hour. It folds out, and we've got bins and carts. Currently, we are taking all of the material and putting it into roll-offs for baling. We're looking at potential portable baling solutions in order to close the entire loop and be able to market materials right out of an event. And the interesting thing about the Roadie is we could sort, for example, in Richmond, all we were sorting was PET, aluminum, and glass. We weren't extracting any fiber. we were extracting fiber at some of the other events. So we could sort up to 10 different commodities, which if we were going to do a composition study in a community, we could get very granular in our sortation. And so the cost effectiveness of being able to sort through a piece of equipment versus table sorting is pretty dramatic. So these are the tools that we're really putting out there for communities and municipalities and independent haulers to be able to change the paradigm of, hey, we need to hub and spoke this material. We need to take it to a large regional MRF. We need to spend $30 million to build a facility so that we could handle all of the recyclables within a region. Again, I want to go back to say that we're not advocating that all recyclables need to be modulated through a smaller scale MRF, but there are a lot of opportunities out there where we are transporting recyclable materials long distances unnecessarily. And there is the opportunity to be able to process those materials locally. And with that, I will open it up for a Q&A session. If you want to moderate that, Wayne.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bob. So yeah, we're going to have a Q&A session. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature on your dialog box. I don't see anything right now, but I have a question. I mean, take NASCAR for example. Would they be interested in having this thing on their tour, so to speak, or their venues? I mean,
yeah. So the Roadie, right now we've got one in service. It's completely booked through November.
Wow.
We are going to have at the end of October, we're going to have the Roadie in Pennsylvania at the RMC offices. So we look forward to featuring it in Pennsylvania. But we've got a very, very full schedule, and what these folks are doing is they're looking at what's the opportunity. For example, we spent time with the Atlanta Braves. Does the Major League Baseball, does an individual stadium want a Roadie? Or does Major League Baseball want a Roadie? Does NASCAR want a Roadie? And it just follows the cars from track to track. So it's still a work in progress, and we're still in our due diligence stage, but it's extremely promising. We have not yet scheduled any composition studies, but we have done a lot of public events. Almost everything we've done so far has been public event recycling.
Okay, here's a specific question. How can we affordably have a MRF on an island of 70,000 people with over 1 million tourists annually? Size, ? Sustainable ?
Yeah, I mean, you've got my contact information. That's basically the criteria that we're looking for in order to look at projects. We go in and we'll do due diligence. We'll figure out what the volume is. We'll work with you. We'll help you to understand what size system is going to support the specific needs to your island. A lot of the large equipment manufacturers today are extremely wrapped up with large projects. So it's really hard to get anybody's attention if you were to go to some of the traditional equipment manufacturers. It takes a lot of the same work in order to design a small scale MRF that it does the large scale. But now that we've got a couple projects on the ground, we're feeling pretty confident that we do have a very sustainable option for communities like your island.
Okay. Going back to the first part of your discussion, Bob, my question is how does things like EPR and banning of certain materials like plastic bags seems to be happening a lot throughout our cities. How does that fit in with the the circular model, and how do you think that will move forward?
Yeah, so our center is focused on beyond the bag, which is if we ban bags, how do we get stuff from the bodega or the grocery store to our home? What do we do with our takeout? And so for the past several years, we've been working with Walmart and Target and a couple of other large retail outlets. I think we've got a total of 18 now that are participating. What is the solution once you get rid of the plastic bag? So you get rid of the plastic bag, then do you go to paper and potentially impact the deforestation of, by cutting down a bunch of trees? For the next gen cup program, we've got all of these disposable cups that are being put out by Starbucks and McDonald's, which are two participants in the next gen cup. What is the solution for that? And so we've been trying to tackle those problems on a large scale in a pre-competitive situation. How would you get you figure a situation where you get McDonald's and Starbucks in the same room? So as a firm, we've got a whole aspect of our firm where we're just doing research and trying to understand, is there a way to come up with solutions that look beyond what we're doing today? In terms of EPR, EPR does have some challenges for existing infrastructure, because if you go to, say, a bottle bill and extract some of the higher value materials out of the stream, it makes the economics for a Murph extremely difficult. But when you look at EPR for, say, some of the other problems that are out there in terms of clothing or electronics, certainly in order to solve those problems, we found with Retriever, where we're doing both clothing and electronics collection, EPR is essential because the economics of, if I can, in a lot of states, you can just throw your clothing and electronics in a landfill and there's no problem with that. So why would I pay a company like Retriever to come out and collect it? So regulation and EPR is important in order to get to the goal of extracting waste from the landfill. For example, in clothing, only 85% of clothing in America ends up in a landfill. Only 15% go through the donation system or go through any kind of recycling. The same holds true for electronics. Close to only 15% of electronics are actually being recycled today. So these are some of the big problems that Closed Loop Partners is attempting to tackle. And we've had some real success in the programs that we've started to date. So Retrievers in the Philadelphia market, where we're servicing 1.2 million households. We're also in Denver, where there's about 400,000 households who have access to the program.
Okay. You may have mentioned this a little bit in the beginning. Can you give some examples of how Closed Loop has worked with municipalities on projects?
Yeah, sure. So the city of Memphis, we funded, actually the city of Memphis and Connecticut, Hartford, We've invested in carts. There's been a number of communities where we invested in carts. The city of Phoenix, Emerald Coast. We've invested in upgrades to their Murphs. So we lent them money for their in the city of Phoenix for their Murph upgrades. So we work with communities and giving them no cost or low cost, below market loans in order to fund their recycling activities. At Hartford, we also provided funding for equipment for trucks. So we invest in a lot of various systems in order to grow recycling across the United States.
Okay. I think this has to do with waste composition studies, but what type of data can the Roadie provide?
So your traditional, there's two ways that folks are doing composition studies today, which are, you can do a system test where you take a community and you hold their volume for a particular day aside. You clean out your entire Murph, you run just their material, you bale all the material, you weigh it, you clean out all the bunkers, and then you get a composition. There's a number of Murphs that'll handle composition studies that way. And then the more traditional way would be where you hire a consultant who comes in and does a table sort. They take ASTM standard sizes, 150-pound samplings, and they put it all on a table, and then they granularly sort it into each individual component. The thought with the Roadie is that we can be somewhere between the full-scale Murph composition study and the consultant table sort, which is extremely expensive on both ends, because to take a traditional Murph that has a staff of, call it 40 sorters, to shut that down for processing for a day to just do an individual community is a very expensive prospect, as is sorting material on a very granular basis. So could you have a Roadie at a Murph and you have a particular load that comes in, and then you run that particular load through the Roadie in order to understand what the composition of that specific truck was? We think the answer to that question is yes. And then, much like a consultant would do, how do you analyze that data to come to the most valuable conclusion on what the true composition study is for a community if you take multiple trucks and look at all of that data together?
Okay, I think that's it for the question. So it looks like, well, just back up a little. This webinar, we started earlier than usual. We started at 1 o'clock. We usually do this at 1:30. So I think a lot of people might have logged on a little bit later. And I think looking at the the attendees here, that might have happened. So and one attendee said that it looks like it may have, the 1:30 time might have showed up in one of the confirmations. So my apologies if that made it through all our promotion materials. But fortunately, this webinar has been recorded. So the question is it recorded? And the answer is yes. We edit the recording and we post it on our YouTube channel. So that will be available in a few days once after we finish the webinar. So my apologies if that confused some people and some people missed the half of the live show. But no worries, it's recorded, and you'll be able to view this at your leisure. So since we have we're out of questions, we're gonna close up. So thanks again for joining us. We hope you'll join us for next month's webinar, and please visit the NRC and RMC websites for schedule updates. And thanks again, Bob, for taking time to talk about this exciting new concept. And thanks for presenting.
Excellent. Okay, Wayne.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.